White text over video of past events. Logo, Cultural Access Collaborative. Professional Development Series presents. Lead Conference Shareout 2023. At left, presentation slides. At top right, mini video of presenting speaker. Below, an ASL interpreter signs.
All right, I think we're ready to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Welcome to our Lead Conference Shareout 2023, presented by the Cultural Access Collaborative. My name is Ruben Carrazana, and I am a steering committee member with the Collab. I use he, him pronouns. I am a Hispanic male in his early 30s. I have short black hair and facial hair. I am wearing a short-sleeved light purple shirt, and I am sitting in a kitchen. For those of you not familiar with the Cultural Access Collab, our mission is to empower Illinois' cultural spaces to become more accessible to visitors with disabilities. There are four primary pillars central to our work, and those include free professional development workshops, an accessible equipment loan program, an accessible event calendar, and our growing statewide network. Now, accessibility is a priority for us, and so our program today includes real-time captioning provided by Dylan Reporting Service, as well as ASL interpretation provided by First Choice Interpreting. If you would like to view captions in a separate browser, you can do so using the stream text link included in the chat. We also encourage you to submit questions for our presenters using the Q&A function. If you have any issues with accessibility, please reach out to our support team via the chat function. In case you find the chat pop-ups bothersome, you can turn off Show Chat Previews by clicking the caret next to the chat button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And now I will pass things off to Zhen, who will introduce LEAD and what LEAD is all about. Take it away, Zhen.
Thank you, Ruben. Hi, everybody. My name is Zhen Heinemann, and I am a steering committee member with the Collab. I'm not sure if you can see me on your screen, but I am a white person with large gold-framed aviator glasses and green headphones, a short mushroom haircut that is dark brown, and I'm wearing a shirt that has bowling pins and other bowling themed graphics on it. And I'm sitting in my office at the Chicago Cultural Center, and it is full of cool, colorful things. I use they, them pronouns. And I'm going to tell you more about LEAD. So what is LEAD? LEAD is the Leadership Exchange in Arts and Disability Conference that is part of the Kennedy Center's Access / otherwise known as VSA International Network. So when you get to go to LEAD, you have the opportunity to become part of that VSA International Network. The conference is held once a year, normally in the late summer, early fall, and LEAD is for anyone who's interested in arts and access for folks with disabilities, like in any kind of cultural space. So it runs the whole stretch from museums, theaters, concert venues, to places like zoos, outdoor event and festival sites, anywhere that you could see any type of cultural program. Folks come to LEAD from there to learn more about how they can increase their accessibility features. So LEAD is also for people who are from a wide range of knowledge points. So there will be folks at LEAD who are brand new, who have just entered their Access Ally journey or thinking about accessibility in terms of their cultural spaces. And there will be people who have been doing this for decades and are incredibly well-versed. There will also be people who are deeply entrenched in the legal side and folks who are brand new front of house members. So it's really for anybody who has an interest and a desire to learn more. This year's program was in Boston, and it took place in late August, the last few days of August. And if you are interested in seeing the agenda for this year's program, please visit accesslead, one word, accesslead.org, click on conference details, and then go to the drop-down where it says agenda. By looking at that, you can get a great sense of all of the different sessions that happened at this 2023 version of LEAD, and to give you an idea of kind of what the day looks like and feels like as well. Next year's conference is July 29th through August 2nd in Seattle. Washington. So for 2024, Seattle, Washington, end of July to the top of August. That's LEAD. Next slide, please. Today, you're going to hear from some folks from the Collab about their experiences at LEAD. And we're going to start with Susan Friel, and then you'll hear from Tina Childress. And then you'll hear again from Ruben, who you just met, Ruben Carrazana, and then me, Zhen Heinemann. So Susan, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Slide, Radical Hospitality, presented by Susan Friel, she, her, Aya, Education and Engagement Manager at Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events.
Thanks, Jen. Hi there. I'm Susan Friel, and I am a white woman with blue hair that's chin length, and I'm wearing brightly colored clothes, and I am at my office here at the Cultural Center. So it's a bustling place, so you might get a little sounds coming over here. I'm also a member of the steering committee. So next slide, please. I was a first timer to LEAD. So my biggest impression from LEAD, and I've been to a million conferences, and what really struck me about this conference was the sense of this radical hospitality, that there was a sense of welcoming. There was just everywhere you went, people had already thought about you before you arrived, right? So there was this abundance, the sense of welcoming and belonging that was not being metered out sort of stingily, like, you know, if you need this, go there. If you need this, go there. It was just present. So everywhere you went in all the sessions, ASL was present, there was captioning, there was audio description, and all of this, I think, really speaks to an aspiration for all folks, you know, that we want to be welcoming. Obviously, you know, the Kennedy Center has been doing this for a long time, and they're kind of they've really set the bar high, but it doesn't mean that we also can't aspire towards that. So whether you have the resources to provide all of these, certainly what you have the resources to do is offer the welcoming, the sense of welcome and the sense of belonging, so that when you are working with folks, that you take into consideration things like movement. You know, like one of the things that I was impressed by was that they offered at the beginning of every session, reminded folks that if you need to get up, you need to walk around, that was perfectly fine. If you needed anything during the time that you were there, that was perfectly fine. And as a big fan of food, I really loved that every time we came out of a session, that there was food available. And it was a different kind of, it was sort of the same idea of like this buffet of resources that were available. There was options. Everywhere you went, there were options. And there was a sense of belonging that you were where you needed to be, and your needs could be met. If they weren't, you could certainly ask for it, excuse me. There were, of course, choices for seating, there was choices for movement, and just a choice of the kind of experience. If you were in a session and the session was just not quite working for you, some of them were quite large, some of them were, you know, folks talking, some of them were more engaging, you were totally invited to take care of yourself and to walk out without any kind of hard feelings or sense of embarrassment. And this is something that I think we can think about in our spaces. So I worked in museums and I worked in cultural centers, and this idea that you can offer a welcoming environment, but also like to profoundly like state it, right? So one of the things that people were talking about in one of the sessions was thinking about the possibility of having a disability acknowledgement. So land acknowledgements have come into play in the last 5 or so years, but rather than just putting a statement out there, why not consider having a statement, but also living that statement? So when people come through your doors or come to your event, that they really feel like they're welcomed. On the slide here on the left, I have an image of 2 people that are seated on a wooden bench, and it looks like a very hard wooden bench. And one of the people is holding before them a blue cushion, and the cushion says, "Museum visits are hard on my body. Rest here if you agree." And this is part of this Please Be Seated initiative, which is at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. One of the sessions that I went to, they were talking about this idea that sometimes museums are not necessarily welcoming for people of all ages, of all types, that it can be exhausting. And this acknowledgement that sometimes museums visits can be hard on people. They had worked with a number of artists to create artistic responses to that. So some beautiful seating, this idea of the cushions, I think was quite lovely. And again, it reminds us that we need to think about all of the people who are coming through our doors and all of the people who need to be part of the experience. And not just, you know, if you can't stand in front of a painting for long periods of time, then why are you even here? Sometimes that seems to be the attitude. All right, so next slide, please. So what I'm offering is this idea for you to consider radical hospitality. One step towards this could be thinking about accessibility and advocacy and advisory in a group. So create a posse, if you will. This is hard work and it can be exhausting, and it's not work to be done by one person. And if you are the one person who's constantly advocating for yourself or for someone else, this can really wear. And so the idea that you need to have allies, and of course, where else can you find better allies than here with the Cultural Accessibility Collab and LEAD. So this is kind of somewhere to really kind of boost your mojo, if you will. The other one of the sessions I went to was about reclaiming language, and this session was called "Why Can't I Say That?" So it was very interesting to have people talk about kind of their exhaustion of thinking about all the different ways to be rethinking language. But the underlying idea is that yes, words do matter, but language does shift from person to person, from time to time. And this idea that's very recently, when people start talking about neurodiversity, there is an assumption in there that there is a neuronormal, and that was kind of insulting for some folks. Now, one of the people in the group offered up what they like to consider themselves, they self-identify as neurospicy, and we all got a big kick out of that because, you know, it's not for one person to identify another, but for one person to decide how they would like to be considered, but also beyond just a simple language is what's the intention behind that. So now that this person is identified, what can you offer them? What can they offer to the event or the venue? I've included in the resources a really good list of etymology, where some of these words have come from, and also a style guide for people to think about language in the future. And finally, I loved this notion of a disability doula. Someone brought this up in one of the sessions, saying that that they were becoming weary of this kind of work, and that they found somebody who was a great ally, and that this was someone that they could go to for nurturing, someone that they could talk about some of their difficulties, to be a guide. And this notion that sometimes you're the doula and sometimes you're seeking the doula. So I just wanted to leave that one final point with you, to be somebody's doula or find a doula in the disability culture. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Susan. This is just a reminder for everyone who's viewing that we will have some time after each speaker to ask some questions. So if you have questions, please put it in the Q&A, and then we can ask those questions after each speaker. And then we'll also have about 10 or so minutes after everyone has presented to have more of a kind of open discussion. Susan, I have a quick question. So this was my first time at LEAD as well. And I was also very impressed by all of the accessibility offerings that were just present at all times without people having to ask for it. And so I guess one question that I had for you is, in your experience when you were there, can you think of a practical thing that other arts organizations can do that was offered at LEAD that is practical, easy to implement, that you think would really be would benefit their audiences?
I'd have to say it's kind of the generosity of spirit and offering people various experiences. So not expecting people across the board to have the same experience. So allowing people to get up and leave a situation, to have that kind of openness. And, in terms of like a physical aspect, here at the Cultural Center, we have the Learning Lab, and in that space, there are a variety of seating arrangements, right? So there's seats that are hard, that are, wooden seats. There are soft, very, very soft, cushy seats like beanbag chairs. So things like that, I think, are easy to incorporate into any organization.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you.
All right. I think we are ready for Tina. Tina, take it away.
Slide, Networking and Representing, presented by Dr. Tina Childress, she, her, sha, audiologist, late deaf and adult, advocate, communication access engineer, T. Childress at culturalaccesscollab.org.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Tina Childress. I am a brown-skinned Filipino female. And I'm really excited to talk to you about my experiences at LEAD. I am a late deafened adult, and I'm also an audiologist. And I think that was my 5th LEAD that I've been to, and I'm completely hooked. So I'm really excited to share with you some of my favorite things about LEAD. So next slide, please. So I did have several presentations at LEAD. One of them was, and this is the thing about LEAD, they really try to kind of mix up the different ways that you can learn. So some of them are really hands-on, like my first one, which was an access lab, where I was demonstrating different kinds of speech to text technologies. And then I had more like a lecture format with another person who was deaf. And that was the foundations of access. So if you've not been to LEAD, or you're like new to the disability access space in cultural kind of and settings, the foundations classes are really great, because you really get kind of a taste, and even more like it's a little bit deeper than a taste. You do get a foundation about all different kinds of disabilities. The third one that I did was also a panel, and I got to talk about Auracast, which is the new Bluetooth protocol that's out there. So I know lots of cultural institutions are looking at the next kind of assistive listening system. So I got to talk with an engineer and a distributor, and it was a really fun talk. And then the last thing that I participated in is towards the end of the conference, we have what we call a wrap up. And during a wrap up, that's when, if anybody has any burning questions about your foundations class, that they can ask that there. And we kind of just rehash things, but all the people that did the foundations classes were there in that space. Next slide, please. So some of my favorite parts about LEAD are networking. I have learned so much about other disabilities also. So when I talk about expanding my repertoire, I feel a lot better about the fact that I don't know everything yet, but at least I know where to go when I want to learn about mobility issues, or, working with people that are blind, low vision. And LEAD is really a great opportunity. You have like subject matter experts, everywhere you look. So definitely take the opportunity to do it. And in terms of, Susan talked about radical hospitality. I will say they also had radical access. And so I had an interpreter that was assigned to me, and for the first time ever. I mean, I've been deaf for 30 years, late deaf, and I sometimes use interpreters, sometimes not. But I had an interpreter that looked like me. Like a coordinator specifically chose a Filipina interpreter. And for me, that was so empowering. And that's what you see also. Ruben asked that question, what is it about LEAD, going there as a first timer? In addition to like radical hospitality, I feel like people at LEAD give you permission to be who you are. If you need to get up and stretch, if you need to, like flap your arms and like get the circulation going, they give you full permission, and you don't need to feel kind of different about that. And so that's what I really appreciate. So next slide. I have, as a steering committee member, I have some goals. So on the left is an image of how you view Illinois if you're from. And so I grew up in a northern suburb, and I used to think that south of Kankakee was southern Illinois. Now that I live in central Illinois, I recognize there's different parts. And of course, when you're not from Illinois, it's basically the state of Chicago, right? Everything in Illinois is all about Chicago. So part of my mission as part of the steering committee is to expand south of the state of Chicago. So short-term goals, I want to get captioning going, open captioning here at the university where my kid actually is an acting major. I want to continue to build my networks throughout the state. But first too, I think we need to determine who are the stakeholders. I think we're not really sure kind of who's down here and who we need to reach out to. And so long-term is, again, expanding the reach of the Cultural Access Collab. And I wanted to do this for years to set up an equipment loan program. So I know I went over a little bit, but thank you so much for listening to my excitement.
Thanks, Tina. That was fantastic. And I want to just say welcome to you as one of our first folks from outside of Chicago. And we're really excited about you bringing these new ideas from all over the state and beyond. And as a 4-time presenter, which is pretty amazing, I'm wondering if you had a particular style that you enjoyed attending. You mentioned some of all the 4 different ways that you had presented. What about you as a learner? Did you find one of those particularly juicy for you?
I really enjoyed the keynote presenters that they often have at LEAD. So one of them was Carrie, was it Thompson? I can't remember her last name, but she's a deafblind individual, and being able to do salsa in Boston Commons was so fun. But also she had a really, really great message about like even her kind of evolution as a person with a disability. And I find that LEAD, they do such a great job of finding those really awesome speakers that kind of like get you going and get you really motivated to keep going.
Definitely. Thank you. I also want to remind folks who are joining us that if you have questions for any of our speakers, you can pop those into the Q&A and we will be glad to ask them on your behalf. And we'll be having a portion a little bit later where you can come onto camera as well. Thank you. So next up, oh, go ahead.
No, you're all good.
Next up,
Thank you,
we have
Susan.
Ruben.
Slide, Accessibility in Live Theater, presented by Ruben Carrazana, he, him, his, Community Engagement Manager at Northlight Theater.
This is Ruben, everyone. Hello, hello. So yes, I am the Community Engagement Manager at Northlight Theater. This was my first time at LEAD. And so the sessions that I attended were primarily about accessibility in live theater, since that is my focus. So the 2 main things that I really looked at was captioning and audio description. These are things that we already offer at Northlight, but we're always looking to improve our offerings. So right now there's a slide showing 2 captioning displays. One of them is a long rectangular LED display that says "Welcome to Northlight Theater," and the other one is what seems to be a flat screen TV, and it says "Chicago Shakespeare Theater presents Wuthering Heights." So some of the things that I took away from the LEAD conference in regards to captioning is not to make assumptions about someone's needs, and that it's always best to ask patrons who are coming to your theater about what modes of communication would work for them. And so before you even start thinking about the captioning in the actual space for the performance, thinking about what options for communication you offer in the lobby, right? So having ASL ushers present, having pens and notepads, having a speech-to-text program that you can use. So offering all of these different modes of communication is really helpful for folks who are maybe new to your theater. And then when it comes to the actual captioning for the performance, considering all options for captions to determine what is best for your space. So, do you offer open captions versus closed captions, and trying to weigh the benefits, the pros and cons of each? Do you have an LED display versus a flat screen TV? Do you place the captions above the stage or below the stage? Do you have one display or multiple? At Northlight, we used to just have one captioning display, but our theater is in a kind of semicircle, so the audience wraps around the stage a little bit. So we realized that if you're sitting on one side of the audience, you can't see the captions if it's on the other side of the stage. So we now have two captions, two captioning displays, one on either side of the stage. So considering all of those options and realizing that there's more than one way to offer this thing. Next slide, please. So when it comes to audio description, one of the things that was really impressive about some of the sessions on audio description was the idea that audio description shouldn't be an add-on, right? This is something that you should ideally build into the budget and into the calendar from the very beginning. And there was this really interesting thought about how can you offer audio description at every performance. So what most theaters do is you have one audio described performance for the entire run of the show. And what that means is if there are any patrons who aren't available for that one performance, then they're out of luck. They can't experience the show. So what if you were to hire an audio describer as you would hire a dresser or a board operator for any other production? This is a person who's a part of the production team who is hired, and they are present at every performance. And if nobody shows up interested in using the audio description, then that person can go home. But the point is that they are paid a fee to be at every performance. So that way the audio description can kind of be on demand, which I thought was a really fascinating concept and seemed relatively easy to implement. And then also expanding the audio describer pool. So there are, in Chicago, at least a handful or two of professional audio describers. But what if they're not available? Or what if you live somewhere where there aren't a whole lot of trained audio describers? How can you expand that pool? So there were ideas about reaching out to actors, reaching out to voice actors, designers, dramaturgs as potential audio describers, folks who have transferable skills, reaching out to them and seeing if this is something that they'd be interested in doing. And also training yourself, attending an audio described performance, seeing how it's done, asking questions, borrowing some audio description equipment from a local organization, a theater who also offers it, and then just providing it for your patrons yourself was, I thought, a really fantastic idea. Next slide, please. Great. So those were my takeaways.
Thanks, Ruben. Those are some great takeaways. So it sounded like, did you kind of focus while you were there, looking primarily at other live theater folks and their performance and their presentations?
Yeah, that's right. That was my primary focus, was seeing how we could improve our accessibility offerings for our live performances, and also was there anything that we were missing, that we were unaware of.
Got it. And also, did you in this journey that you've been taking with Northlight Theater, how long has it taken you to get to this point where you're like thinking about full-time, all the time audio describers? I imagine there's been a bit of a journey here.
Yeah, so I would say that 2 years ago, we didn't offer any of this. We had some open captioning, but there was no person who was kind of in charge of reaching out to folks in the community and really ensuring that these captions were being used by people and getting feedback from folks. So for us, it's been a 2-year journey. And when we started audio description, we bought 2 wireless devices because we didn't know who would show up. And then every couple of months, we would buy 1 or 2 more, and then we'd buy 1 or 2 more. And we borrowed equipment from the CCAC at the time, now the CAC. We borrowed the audio description equipment from them, and that was really helpful. And little by little, we were able to grow our audience. And now we regularly have 20 or so patrons who are blind or have low vision who attend our audio described performances. But it just takes time and getting feedback and providing multiple options for getting feedback, online surveys, giving them your email, your phone number, so that folks have different avenues for reaching out to you for what it is that they need and what's working for them.
Thanks for sharing that and for reminding people about our lending equipment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Next up, we have Zhen.
Hi again,
Hey, Zhen,
folks.
take it away.
Slide, accessibility audits and data research, workplace inclusion, front of house, including training, know before you go, and situations. Presented by Zhen Heinemann, they, them, Director of Visitor Experience and Public Engagement at Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events.
It's me, Zhen Heinemann. I am again the person with the brown mushroom haircut. I'm a white person. I use they, them pronouns, gold aviator glasses, and bowling themed shirt dress. And I am here to talk about this is a slightly outdated slide for me. I apologize, but mine is about admin access. And everything that I kind of looked at LEAD this year, sat in on, listened to, was looking at the way that accessibility takes place in our workplaces. And so it's interesting to me to listen to the previous speakers who talked, because we had somebody that Susan talked about kind of leading by example and setting the stage really for how access can be done for participants. But, you know, having that experience. And then Tina talked about showing up and like growing yourself and being visible in a space. That LEAD allows you to do that. And then Ruben talked about specifically focusing on guest access and how LEAD helps you learn and grow in your thinking about access for the guests. And LEAD also, as the fourth kind of component, helps you learn and grow thinking about what happens behind the scenes, right? So if you can go to the next slide. So accessibility audits help us to look at what our organization is doing well and what our organizations could do better. And this could be so many different kinds of organizations can do accessibility audits. But the tips that I took away were, number one, that you come away with data and research, which is great. And you also make a community. But when you create that community, you should definitely pay and incentivize being part of that community to the people with disabilities that you are asking to join. So, you know, different organizations might be able to do that in different ways. Some might have the budget to pay with money. Others might have the ability to incentivize in other ways, but you definitely want to not just be extractive in taking knowledge from people, but instead create a real relationship with them. And then you work with user experts. So if you're specifically diving into things about what the experience for blind and low vision people is, or, you know, what the experiences for deaf folks are, or hard of hearing folks, then definitely, you know, focus on getting that community to be part of it. If you're looking for kind of a generalized persons with disabilities experience, make sure that you have lots of different people who identify as having various visible and non-apparent disabilities in your committee. And then connect with local organizations for people with disabilities. We hear a lot that people kind of don't know, you know, how do I find people with disabilities who might want to be part of this? Well, there's probably plenty of local organizations working with people with disabilities that could ask, especially if you're paying these folks, that they might be able to share your call for participants. And then share your data. What did you learn? You know, be transparent. What did you find out about your organization, and where is your organization going to go from where you learned? So be transparent with your data. It might help another organization or group figure out what they want to do, or it might ring true to them as well. And then tell folks where you're going to go with that, and then edit as you learn. You know, I think for all of us, and when you're at LEAD, it's really encouraged as well to continue to realize that nothing is ever going to be absolutely flawless, and we're going to continue to develop it, and we're going to continue to think about it and receive feedback, and then make revisions to our plans, and then that's okay. The next thing that I really focused on is training. I'm going to hold, we can look at this for a second, but I'm going to hold on the screen. You see workplace inclusion is training, and specifically on training staff. So workplace inclusion, training staff at hiring is a great idea that I heard at LEAD that I hadn't really thought of before. We normally train staff kind of annually in a different way, and then annual front of house trainings. So that's all training your staff. And then on the other side, you have training or informing your audience. What are your know before you go pages like on the website, or what do you have social stories like those visit experience narratives that help people know how to physically engage with your space, or what they're going to find there, or what the experience might be like. So there's two key things of training, right? You've got your kind of behind the scenes, and then you've got your front of the house, in front of the scenes. And next slide, workplace. Thank you. Workplace inclusion. So workplace inclusion was a really interesting one that I sat in on a couple of sessions for about LEAD to think about what the experience is like for people that work in your organization. It's great to make sure that we're reaching our guests' needs, but what is it like for the folks that work in the organization? And so something that Susan and I work together here at DCASE, and something that we've been talking about that we heard at LEAD that sounded like a great idea, is to get a workplace access team together. So it's kind of like an ERG, like an employee resource group, but not really. It's a little bit more specifically like the group of people who are going to have certain training, but also certain things in mind, so that when they are in situations hearing about things that are happening in the workplace, you know that you have a group of allies together, right? So where is the access team in your workplace? And then it also means making sure that the audience know before you go is looked at from all of those kind of views. Did facilities look at it? Did marketing look at it? Make sure everyone can have a say on what they think would be great to add, because folks come up with different things when they're looking through different lenses. And then access for staff. We deserve what we need to be able to work. And so access for staff, what is the process to request reasonable accommodation? What is the timeline to hear back on that? What for us, for employees, like maybe a little bit of training on what does that mean to request reasonable accommodation? Because there's a kind of communication strategy in that where you can say, here are the things that work for me, right? You're not just requesting necessarily a thing. You're saying, this is what is causing me difficulty in the workplace, and here are the things that I know can work for me to be able to alleviate some of that discomfort. And then once again, the training at hire was like, that sounds great, just before folks even get into the workplace culture, to know that that's part of the workplace culture is wonderful. And then of course, reviewing your job applications. Still, a lot of folks' job applications are a little outdated. They say things that maybe the job doesn't really need. Maybe there's a team that could do the lifting of the 15-pound box, or maybe you don't always need to do the lifting of the 15-pound box. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen. That was really helpful to be thinking about all the different players and the whole continuum of care that goes into all these things. And, you know, I know that you're working hard on frontline training, and I'm wondering if you could comment on that just a little bit, because I think folks could really benefit from hearing about maybe some of the wins in that, maybe some of the challenges about working with your frontline staff folks.
This is Zhen. Thanks, Susan, for that question. You know, I think one of the major wins is that you can offer things. You can, if you're a standing room only venue, you can have some folding chairs in case somebody needs a chair, in case their experience would be better if they're a chair. But if you have those and not all of your staff knows where those are or what to do if someone asks for one of them, then the experience is kind of immediately negated, right? So frontline training is really important to make sure that all of the staff, anybody who's going to be standing there, anybody who might get asked an access question, not just your, you know, box office or front of house desk or, you know, whoever those folks are, but your security guards, you know, your volunteers, whoever is going to be in the space, because folks just ask people questions if they look like they are knowledgeable, if they're part of your organization. And if those people don't know, where is the charging for wheelchairs or oxygen tanks, right? Or, you know, where would you take their mobility device, which I don't recommend you taking, but, you know, if they don't understand all of the beautiful access things that the organization has in place, then they fall apart right in that moment when it's most crucial. So I think frontline staff training is really key to making sure that everybody makes that experience really smooth and seamless. And it's also helpful if you have rules about things, so people who are talking to your guests don't incorrectly inform them of something that you've worked hard to put in place as a good thing.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that.
Thanks.
I'm going to pass the baton now to Ruben, who's going to be talking to folks about our popcorn session. Take it away, Ruben.
Awesome. This is Ruben again. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Zhen. So yes, at this point, you know, there were many people from Illinois that were at the LEAD conference. And so we we wanted to give those folks an opportunity to share some of their takeaways. There were some takeaways that were sent to us ahead of time. So, for example, we received an email from Tom Close of Crossing Borders Music, who has given us permission to read one of his key takeaways. And he said that way more people are autistic than are diagnosed, especially from non-dominant IDs. And we can make our performances more autism friendly and just more human friendly pretty easily. So I wanted to open it up to folks to see if Tom, I don't know if Tom is in the meeting, but if Tom or anyone else joining us now can share more about what you learned at LEAD about autism friendly strategies. I think if we raise hands or if we put in the chat, there's a way to get your camera turned on.
Hi, this is Tom. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can. Hi, Tom.
Okay, you might not be able to see me, and maybe that's okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if I have a lot to add to that, but in addition to being autism friendly, as Susan mentioned, inviting people to move or to get up and leave and come back.
Right. Yeah, I think that was one thing that was really impressive to me. It's like every session was a relaxed performance in a sense, right? And there was no questions asked. People could stand up, walk away, which I thought was really great and really welcoming, and really took the pressure off of folks in the audience to try to be active listeners at all times. Thank you so much, Tom. We also had Sahai, who sent this takeaway: sharing this information with organizations and colleagues is important. How do attendees plan to share with their demographics? So I was wondering if there's anyone currently in the webinar, maybe some of the folks who already shared, or other Illinois attendees who wanted to share about how they plan on kind of like disseminating some of their takeaways and information that they gathered while at LEAD. Yeah, Tina mentions that she liked that they had sensory room with fidgets, low lighting, et cetera, right? So kind of like a space that people could kind of step away from the sessions if they needed to, what some theaters might refer to as like a quiet area, designated quiet space, right?
Hey, Ruben, this is Zhen. I'm going to pop in with an answer to Sahai's question. How do attendees plan to share with their groups? Well, aside from this, right, we are here sharing out on this collab webinar, but I think also sharing is just talking to everybody who I work with and saying, hey, I went to LEAD and this is what I learned, and here's some key takeaways. Or, hey, for the facilities folks, oh, hey, facilities folks, what I heard that reminded me of you, and kind of sharing that information. But then also sharing with our guests, I think, shows up kind of on the back end, right? Where we just implement new things that kind of share with our guests what we took away. And then another way that is great to be able to share is the Collab's listserv. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that if other people think of things later that they want to share, or they want to engage in more dialogue once this webinar is done, the Collab has a listserv, and it's a great place to pop those things you learn in, pop those great plans that your organization or yourself came up with, and created for your space and your guests or your workforce into there. And so that we can all continue to kind of, permaculture this. Yeah, there is a VSA listserv as well, the Kennedy Center's LEAD listserv, which is super great, and you can sign up to be part of it. And if you attend LEAD, you're kind of opted into it. So either of those are great places to also continue to share.
Great, thank you, Zhen. I was wondering if I think Lauren might still be with us. Lauren, I know that you were really interested in service animal policies for cultural institutions. And so I was wondering if you could share about any sessions on this topic at LEAD that you were present for.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Pincus, and I work at the Chicago Communities, and I'm also a steering committee member. Yes, actually, service animals is something that I am really interested in just because at Chicago Communities, we are kind of all over Chicago from north to south. And so we are working with different venues and different rules. So I just was very interested about that. By rules, policies is really what I meant by that. And so with the service animals, I was just really curious how people are, when they're in that situation, what do they do besides asking the two questions from the ADA of what is the task that the dog performs, or it could be a mini horse. I haven't seen it yet, but it definitely could be. And so I was just curious about that. And what I learned is that you could have a system of having wristbands, the red, yellow, green, whatever color you would like. And you can actually ask the person if you are unsure of what the task is. You can ask the ADA questions, but as well let them know that we do have a system, a checkout system, and you have a wristband and you put a number, the number of the customer on that wristband, and you ask the person, are you comfortable with me putting this on the dog's collar, or would you like to do it? And you would put that wristband on the collar, and then you would make sure that you have a list, and that list would have the person's name and the number. And so what this does is if the dog were to get lost, you have a way to track who's the owner of the service animal, which I think is really important, especially for us. We have events that are from 9 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, and we're all over a venue. And I think it's really important to have an additional system in place just in case, because you just never know. And so that's just something I learned, as well as making sure the staff is trained on additional procedures. And that doesn't just include front of house, but that includes security, right? Letting security know about service animals and understanding what that means, I think is one tidbit that I was like not thinking about, because we have a third party security group come in. And so really talking to them about at our event, if someone put in a request in for who are bringing a service animal, talking to them about that and what that entails. So yeah, that's just like a little bit of what I learned. If you have any other questions, please ask.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. Yeah, we do have a question. The question was, what do you do if they can't answer that question, such as what task does your service animal do?
Thanks, Tina. Great question. Yeah, if they can't answer the question, then there's a bit of a conversation that has to happen, whether that's with your front of house or whomever is leading that event, of just, is this an emotional support animal, which it very much could be, and is that part of your procedures, right? So if it is an emotional support animal and you accept that, then you can have a conversation and say, we are allowing you into our event, but we just want you to be cognizant and understand that if the dog acts out, we would please ask you to leave the event. But if you do not accept emotional support animals, then you have to have that conversation with the customer and let them know, like, I'm so sorry, but we do not accept emotional support animals. We would need you to either have someone else watch the dog or watch the animal while you're in the event, or we unfortunately will have to ask you to leave, and then you'll talk about ticketing and all of that goes along with it. But that typically is what happens. For the most part, people who have service animals, well, I can't really say that, but we would hope that they are certified service animals and they are trained to work with that customer. I hope that answered the question.
Got it. Thank you, Lauren. I think we have time before we move on to open questions. I know that some of y'all attended this kind of ASL salsa event at LEAD, and I was wondering if Susan could hop on to talk a little bit more about her experience during this.
Hey there.
I think Tina was also present at this one, and it was just so wonderful to have this experience. Carrie Thompson, who is pictured in the photograph on the screen right now, there are some people in the park at the Boston Commons, and everybody's dressed in black, apparently, yes. The woman in the middle, dressed in black, was the presenter, Carrie Thompson, and she's inside this little tiny taped blue box. So right on the plaza, she had this box, and she was describing how to salsa and how, going up to each corner of the box and left and right and all that good stuff. There's a person standing behind her. As Tina mentioned earlier, Carrie is deaf and recently blind. And so she had said that in her presentation, she said that many of you that I had seen in the last few years, I might not recognize you and you might not know this about me, but I have recently become blind. So I think it was a very interesting experience for her, having known people and saying, when you come up to me now, I'm changing. And so it's different that I might not recognize you. And she has a person who accompanies her throughout the whole conference, who was using haptics and like tapping her on the back and giving her signals so that she could essentially read the room and know what was going on around her. But it was just fabulous to see this experience in the park. And there are folks there. There's two gentlemen to the left of the picture, both. Well, one of them who is blind and one who is deaf, and they were partners in this dance. And so this whole park experience was heavily loaded with folks who came from the conference, but also just passersby, right? And so folks were just joining in and dancing. And it was a really beautiful experience to have so many things happening at one time. There was the music going on, all these folks are dancing, and everyone was well taken care of. They had water for folks. And again, to kind of go back to that, the idea of the radical hospitality and radical accessibility, it's like, once you start practicing it, it just seems like, well, why wouldn't you have these things available? So I don't know if anybody else wanted to talk about that experience.
This is Zhen. Thanks, Susan, for giving us that description of the salsa on the Boston Commons that was part of LEAD 2023. At this point, we are ready to make sure that we answer anybody's questions who is here on the webinar that has any questions for us. I am looking at the document, and I don't think that we've had any in the chat, but you may drop them in the chat still if you would like. If we don't have any questions for you, I just have one more for Susan. Susan, the concept of radical hospitality is so inviting and interesting, and that you spoke about. I'm wondering if anybody else in the group wants to say anything about any radical hospitality that they encountered, that they saw at LEAD, or that they are trying to embody in their own work. I love this idea of the radical hospitality and how it kind of is how it can be the most inclusive. Anybody for radical hospitality, or if our attendees have any radical hospitality ideas, if you want to drop those in the chat. And meanwhile, if we can go to the next slide, please. I will also give you this space to be able to check out our QR code to the resources related to this program. So a resource list was compiled, and you can find on the document today's agenda, the slideshow presentation, as well as other helpful resources, links to different documents or different folks' plans for things to help you think about your cultural accessibility planning, as well as LEAD, Leadership Exchange in Arts and Disability Conference ideas. And if you have any other resources that you want to share with us attendees, feel free to also drop those in the chat as well.
QR code resource link, bit.ly/3T5U4NE.
Then can I say something?
Yes, please, Tina, go ahead.
So I would say, as an attendee with a disability, I felt very comfortable in asking for what I needed and not feeling like I was being an inconvenience or, that I would get a lot of pushback. And that's something that I really appreciate. They're flexible, they're open, they follow best practices as well. So for example, having interpreters that are assigned to me meant that I could, put my finger to the wind and decide, oh, I'm going to go to that session instead of that session, or I'm going to, leave this session because I think I may benefit more from another session. And if it was, a situation where the interpreters were only there for that session, I wouldn't have that opportunity. And I really appreciate how they go above and beyond, for people that need support personnel, if they're blind, low vision, again, having that sensory room available. I just feel like for people with disabilities, it was also radical.
Thank you, Tina. This is Zhen. That's wonderful. I will say I definitely took, I have a non-apparent disability and I've been having a flare, and I definitely took advantage of that room. It's also nice for LEAD, if you think about it, they do offer rooms in the hotel. You can get a room rate if you're going to go to the conference, so that you can have your hotel room in the hotel that the conference is, but not everybody can do that. Or some people are coming maybe from the area and can't drive all the way back home to where they live, or need to stay at a friend's house or something like that. And so if you need a place to be able to take a rest, LEAD is more than welcoming about finding places for you to be able to do that, and making sure that they offer places for that as well. So thanks everybody. Thanks Collab folks for being here, and the Collab folks behind the scenes who are doing the tech support and dropping things into the chat. And thank you all for joining us here today as attendees and listening in. And at this time, we'll start to bring today's program to a close. Thank you for visiting our resource page so that you can take those things with you into the future. And thank you to our accessibility service providers who are here with the ASL interpretation and our live captioning. And thank you again all for joining and for offering your support to the Cultural Access Collaborative. We hope to see you again and again. In the chat, you'll find a link to our feedback survey. Please click on that and take it. It is very short. And you can also find us on social media via the links that are placed in the chat as well. And very importantly, in this moment in time right now, please, we hope to see you at the Collab's 10-year anniversary celebration and fundraiser Tuesday, October 30th, 2023 from 5 to 7 p.m. Tuesday, October 30th, 2023, 5 to 7 p.m. Collab's 10-year anniversary. So come on and learn more and register at the URL dropped in the chat, and we will see you there. Thank you again for supporting Cultural Access Collaborative.
Credits appear. LEAD Conference ShareOut 2023, presented by Cultural Access Collaborative. For workshop resources and more information, visit culturalaccesscollab.org. Presenting speakers: Ruben Carrazana, Community Engagement Manager, Northlight Theater; Susan Friel, Education and Engagement Manager, Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events; Dr. Tina Childress, Audiologist and Communication Access Engineer; Zhen Heinemann, Director of Visitor Experience and Public Engagement at Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. Workshop Accessibility: Dylan Reporting Service, Real-Time Captioning; First Choice Interpreting, ASL Interpretation; Video Editing, Captioning, and Audio Description by BridgetMelton.com.